This is Arts Alive. I'm Linda Philippi. My guest today is Joe Wilkins. Joe is a professor of English and literature at Linfield College in McMinnville. He's also a writer, and he's appearing today to talk about the upcoming Terroir Writing Festival in April. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet you.
Yes, it's great to be here.
So you come to McMinnville sort of via Iowa and Montana.
Yeah, I was most recently in Iowa. I taught at a liberal arts college there. But I'm from Montana. My wife's from Vancouver, Washington, and we'd been looking west to get back west. And so when we saw the job opening at Linfield, we were very excited.
And that's it.
Feel a little bit like I won the lottery getting the job.
Oh, good.
It's just a great place to be. Yeah.
Well, you know what, McMinnville, you did win the lottery because this is a fabulous town, as I'm sure that you know since you've been here for several months now.
Yes, absolutely. And the local food movement here, and I think I was mentioning earlier, the arts community here is so vibrant, so alive, so many wonderful writers and so much wonderful stuff. So it's great to be here.
So now you have written several books, you said?
Yeah.
Including a memoir.
Yeah, my memoir, The Mountain and the Fathers,
Okay.
Growing Up on the Big Dry, is a memoir of childhood in eastern Montana. I grew up in an area that they call the Big Dry, which is this big chunk of real estate in eastern Montana that's bounded by three rivers, the Missouri, the Yellowstone, and the Musselshell, but there's not a single year-round river that runs through it. And it's technically high desert, it gets less than 13 inches of rain a year. And that's where my grandfather had his ranch, and I grew up right there. And it was a really striking place to grow up, in many ways. It felt sort of out of time. We had to drive 80 miles for groceries, and
oh my goodness.
Our nearest neighbors were miles away. And it was complicated then by the fact that my father died when I was very young. And so we were in this place that was very much a masculine place, a place where men did the work, and I grew up without a father. And so the book then, The Mountain and the Fathers, becomes kind of a search through the many fathers that sort of stepped in when my own father died. My grandfather and many of the men in the neighborhood. So.
Okay, this is the cover of your book?
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Did your family continue to farm that land?
We did, yeah. My grandfather had the cattle ranch out north for a number of more years, and we farmed the place on the river, on the Musselshell River, for about 3 or 4 more years. And then we started leasing it out. Once my brother and I got to middle school, and it just became too much for my mom to keep down a job and the farm. Oh, sure. So we leased the farm out. And so we were still on the sort of the home place, but someone else was running the land. So.
And then from there, you said, I don't think I want to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's my grandfather was quite a character. He was he was a cowboy. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. That's just what he did. The world from horseback was the world that you ought to look at. And he loved that life. He loved writing, and he loved fixing fence. And he recognized very early, I think, that my brother and I were lost causes. We were bookish like our mother, and we got bucked off every horse we ever tried to get on. And, so he, the cowboy he was the one who encouraged us, to read and to go to college and to do these other things.
It's like you're hopeless as a cowboy. You might as well go do what you're good at. I mean, it's true. That's good.
Yeah, it was. It was great to have him, and he was probably the most important father I had growing up.
Of course, I would think so, yeah. And then from there, you discovered a whole other world once you got to town and
I went to college.
Discovered girls and all that.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what else have you written?
So I've got 2 other books. I was trained as a poet. I studied at the University of Idaho with the poet Robert Wrigley. And so that's my first book is a book of poems. And my latest book is a book of poems, a memoir is kind of sandwiched in between there. And that's sort of what I fall back on often. I write a lot of poems, especially when I'm struggling with other things. I turn to poems and play with the language a little bit, and
I like that.
Yeah, that's something that I can sort of always keep doing.
Is your grandfather still alive?
He isn't. He passed, it'd be over a decade ago now.
Oh, wow,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's looking down from someplace,
yeah.
proud of you. Now, let's talk a little bit then about your work with Terroir, with your association with the festival. Are you going to be leading a workshop?
Yeah, I'm going to be leading a workshop and sort of getting back to that both poetry and prose thing. I'm going to be leading a workshop called Notes Toward Evocative Prose, using poetic techniques.
I love it.
In prose writing.
Fabulous.
So, it's going to do a little bit of both what we can learn from poetry that we can bring to writing paragraphs. Specifically, I'm going to focus on fiction this time around, but it could be equally as important for nonfiction. So.
Sure. I mean, it's true when you talk about using poetry, I think sometimes about how like a little phrase or just an image will pop into your mind. And sometimes it's just one or two or three words. If you're smart enough to write it down, then you can go back and look at it and say, oh, I remember what that was about.
Yeah, and the best prose writers, you know, you look at Toni Morrison or Cormac McCarthy, I mean, their language is so rich and dense and thick and full of syncopation and rhythm. It really is, it is a kind of poetry, unlined, but a kind of poetry. They're very attuned to the sound the language is making as well as the sense it's making. So. And
you were mentioning that you were reading a lot of Northwest writers before you came here.
Yeah, you know, I posted on Facebook, I said, okay, everybody, tell me which Northwest writers I have to read. And I've read a lot of Montana writers. You know, that's where I grew up, and so I've gravitated that way. But it was great to get a list of other folks to read. And, you know, I mean, two that stand out to me are my colleagues at Linfield. Anna Kesey, whose book, Little Century, is just
I love that book.
An amazing novel.
It really is.
And then Lex Runciman's poems are so wise and straightforward, and sometimes a little bit, you know, they feel straightforward, but there's a mystery underneath them that I really appreciate and really enjoy. So.
By the way, did Mike Santenay tap you for his poetry project?
I don't think he has yet.
Oh, okay. Well, he probably will be doing that. Yeah. He does a thing, a poem a day won't kill you or something.
Oh, no, he did. I forgot.
A poem a day won't hurt you or something?
Yeah. Oh, no, he came out this summer, and I read a James Wright poem.
Oh, you didn't read one of your own?
No. Well, I just love this James Wright poem so much, so I read that one, yeah.
All right. Oh, that's good. So, so you're going to be leading the workshop, and obviously, I'm hoping you're going to be leading people through some like writing exercises as well.
We're gonna, you know, one of my sort of fundamental pedagogies is that, you know, we learn to be writers by reading. We look out what other people have done, and we try on those ideas, try on those techniques. So we're going to read a little bit, and then we're going to try to see what they're doing, try to make sense of it a little bit, and pull out some of the techniques that they're using to make their paragraphs work, and then try that in our own writing. So.
When you were young and your grandpa was trying to get you to work, were you the kid that always had a book and like and you're on the horse or on the tractor with the book in your hand and it's like sneaking it in between when you're supposed to be doing something else?
Yes, absolutely. But then again, you know, my grandpa, so he quit school in the 8th grade to go cowboy for a living, but he was incredibly well read. You know, they just had a huge personal library at the house, and so often as not, he and I would be talking about books or talking about something he'd read. So it was kind of nice to, you know, have a book lover on the tractor next to me.
So it's kind of, you know, I think about your grandpa in this sort of image of like the true romantic Westerner, you know, where he's really romancing the land, but yet it gives you so much time to think about the big themes of life, you know, and all that wide open sky, of course, which Montana has, right? With only 13 inches of rain, you get a lot of blue sky,
right? Sure,
and a lot of time to yourself to think, and then winters to read.
Yes, absolutely. He, in many ways, he was, and that's another thing The Mountain and the Fathers does. Is one of the projects of the book is to talk about what it means to be a male in the West and masculinity. And he's someone who, in many ways, fits the stereotype. But then in other ways, you know, he didn't. He was timid in groups. You know, he wasn't a garrulous or gregarious person. He definitely wouldn't have, you know, have been at the OK Corral or anything like that. You know,
he was quiet.
Yes, a quiet person. So there was ways in which he definitely fit that stereotype, and ways in which he didn't, and that was important for me growing up to see both of those things and to try to navigate those differences.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't grow up with somebody who would have been comfortable in the OK Corral, because that would have made it a little bit difficult for you.
Yeah, well, there were some of those around in the community I grew up in.
I'm sure, yeah. Well, you've retained some of that Western mountain man, though, with the beard, you know, and the hardy outdoorsman look, you know. I like that.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So what are you finding with your classes at Linfield? How are you finding that the students respond to some of your ideas and your themes?
The students at Linfield are wonderful. They're so earnest, so hardworking, willing to try things. Last semester I taught the Intro to Creative Writing course and the Literary Nonfiction course, and the students were just great. They did so much good work. And in my literary nonfiction course in particular, you know, often they've maybe read a few memoirs, but they haven't read many personal essays. And I think that's where their eyes are really open, and they can see what people are doing with form and see what people are doing with content and try to match their own stories to those things. And they just wrote some wonderful stuff. So
yeah, it's probably true. Maybe for somebody as a first-time college student, they might think, well, gee, do I have enough memoir, you know, enough material in me? Do you feel a little arrogant about the idea that you have the authority to do a memoir, you know, and so they're giving them permission to say, hey, let's talk about your life so far, you know.
Absolutely.
The first 19 years, whatever
and
that
often,
is.
too, to remind them that oftentimes the most dramatic material doesn't necessarily make the best story.
Of course.
You know, just in a regular old mundane day, deeply observed, deeply thought about, can make for fascinating material.
That's really true, actually. You know, somebody can tell the story of, you know, falling off their skates and breaking their arm, and that can, I mean, that could either go up or down, you know, either way, really. There's a lot of material. So, does your wife write?
No, she doesn't. She teaches on the other end of things. So I teach at the college level. She teaches early childhood. So, yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So you have a nice balance in the house.
Right, right. And we often we talk about how, though the content is very different, sometimes the strategies are the same, you know, for
Of course. Of course,
getting things across in the classroom.
Well, you know, human nature doesn't really change a whole lot. And then there's people who work in assisted care facilities, and they say the same thing.
Sure.
It's like running a kindergarten, you know, just have to herd them into one meal and into the next thing. So I think, we're kind of the same. That's that common thread that runs through people's lives.
Sure, yeah.
So have you ever actually lived then in a really urban environment?
You know, I haven't lived for too long. I spent a summer in Seattle once. Had a job there, and I lived for a semester in London on a study abroad program.
How fun!
Yeah, it was great.
So how was that for you?
Oh, it was. I mean, it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I do have to say though that I'm most comfortable in smaller in areas where I can get out of town in a matter of minutes rather than hours. So it's been great to be at a place like this because we can be in the Coast Range quickly. We can be to the coast quickly. We haven't explored the Cascades yet, but that's coming up this summer. So
okay, I don't know if we've got the time or not, but maybe we could quickly run through your book covers one more time.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Music Man Paul. Let's see if he can get those up there.
So this is my second book of poems, most recent book, Notes from the Journey Westward. This just won the High Plains Book Award, and I'm really excited about this book.
That's great.
Yeah, I think it's my best book of poems. So
okay. And maybe there'll be another one.
And this is the first book of poems, Killing the Marine Dogs. And you know, your first book, you always have a little emotional attachment to. Yeah,
like your firstborn child.
Yes.
You've got those pictures.
Yeah, right, yes.
Okay, and where can we find your books?
You'd be able to find my books. You could definitely find the memoir, The Mountain and the Fathers, at 3rd Street Books here in McMinnville. You could order, I'm sure, the books of poetry through 3rd Street here in McMinnville. And I know you can find them up in Powell's and other independent bookstores around.
Okay, great. So they're definitely published and they're out there.
They're out in the world.
Oh, that's wonderful news. Okay. So how long ago was it that you published the book that won the award?
Let's see, just over a year now.
Okay.
So that won the High Plains Award. The big news though is the memoir just won a big award.
Did it?
Yeah, the GLCA New Writers Award, which goes to a first book in a genre. And so it previously went to Alice Munro and Louise Erdrich and some other wonderful writers. So
oh my gosh, well I guess I better get your autograph now. You're destined for greatness.
Well, I hope so. I'm just... yeah, really excited to be in that company. So.
Well, I am so happy to meet you and look forward to seeing you at Terroir and taking your workshop.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great.
Take off your...